a lot of people this morning.
It was a terrific turnout. Good morning. Welcome and thank you for attending our Ways and Means Budget Subcommittee meeting this morning. There are two items that we'll be taking up and hearing from those budget hearing from the Finance Department, and then later will be the 911 Department. So pleased to be joined by Councilmember Yang, Council Vice President Glidden, Councilmember Bender, and Councilmember Andrew Johnson. So I think we'll just begin and launch right into the first of our presentations. This is from the Finance and Property Services Department, and I'm sure Mr. Carpenter will do an outstanding presentation. We're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm going to define outstanding as brief, and then I can meet that criteria. Knowing that the 911 presentation is scheduled to start at 11, I will do my best to go through this as comprehensively but also quickly as possible. If you do have questions along the way or want to discuss things later, I've got my whole team here so we can address things as they come up or put them offline later.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I'm sorry, before you begin, I just wanted to remind members I am using speaker management, so if you're able to log into that, that would help us manage the queue, as well as track my attention if you're not able to do so. Please continue, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. The Finance and Property Services Department budget is in pages F85 to 98 in the budget book. Thought we would start with the organizational view before we get into program budgets of the department. I have 6 direct reports. Left to right, we have the controller, Connie Griffith, is here, and the list of activities that fall under the controller's purview are detailed in the presentation. I call out in particular here a sometimes not fully appreciated fact is that the controller's division actually does a lot of the details related to budgeting. The actual entry of budgets into the general ledger, et cetera. So a significant portion of the production of the actual budget is in the controller's division. Also within the controller's division, all the work around project accounting, whether that's public works or CPED or any kind of, or IT happens, as well as grants management in most forms. And then finally, the whole internal control aspect, audits and other forms of financial and subrecipient monitoring that comes through the controller's division. Then the Enterprise Financial Management Division, Sandy's, headed by Sandy Christensen, where we have, of course, all the budget, not just the operating, but also the capital budget and our new greatest favorite CARS budgeting program, as well as financial planning broadly for the enterprise, which encompasses a lot more than just budgeting. So we get into helping to manage not just our debt, but how we do investments and how we pay for those investments, as well as work related to administering NRP and CPP contracts and different things related to CPED and NCR. Then we have Greg Goki, our Director of Property Services. So the suite of services there, of course, it's primarily focused around facilities in 2 different general, there's the sort of upkeep, operations and maintenance, the custodians et al. And then there's the facility construction, planning, moves, space management side. But also within Greg's world is the energy management for the city, Brian Milberg, and as well as some security coordination, which are sometimes lost, as well as the public safety communications, otherwise known as the radio shop, and how we maintain and enhance our public safety communications. Then we have Gary Warrenberg, Director of Procurement, which at its basis level, most people know as receiving bids and managing RFPs, but also encompasses enterprise contract management, as well as our purchase orders, central requisitions receiving. Bruce Plant, the Treasurer, everything having to do with cash, receiving cash, paying cash, managing cash. Utility billing is also there, as well as all of our banking relationships. And Lonnie is not here, which is unfortunate because since she prepared the work, she didn't put her own name in the box there at the upper right-hand corner, Administrative Services. Lonnie Erickson Baker, who runs this division, which encompasses not only our internal technology support function, but also all of our administrative and HR matters for the department. So that's the sort of organizational view, just to give people some grounding before we move into the budget view. And when we went to program budgeting a couple of years ago, what we did in our department is, rather than taking that, when you say you're the director of procurement, sometimes that's hard to get your head around what does that really mean. So what the programs in our world do is try to give it a more common sense description of what is the activity that relates to this. So you'll see down the left-hand side all the different programs. They align generally with divisions. So the first one, accounting and financial reporting, is primarily the controller's division, but there are parts of the controller's division, for example, that go down and pay employees, because that is where payroll is. And there are other parts of our organization that get attributed for budget purposes to these various programs. At this summary level, rather than going into too much detail on the programs, we'll get into that in a second, I direct our attention to the bottom line there, where we've depicted the 2015 mayor's recommended budget for the entire department, comprised roughly half and half between general fund dollars and non-general fund dollars, is $43.2 million. The 2014 adopted budget was $42 million, so it's a $1.15 million increase, which is 2.8%. And we'll get into a little bit more on the details as to where that comes from. By and large, this is the 2.8% covers what we would call the base budget or current service level. The growth is primarily around inflation, around employees, wages and benefits. There are also some accounting adjustments related to budgeting for some FTE movement among departments. We have a couple of employees that are in our department now who used to be in other departments, so they're now fully baked into the budget. And we also plugged some accounting holes related to how we pay for vacant space. Sort of just to hang out there, and now we've budgeted for it. So 2.8% overall. You will see on this slide also that the only enhancement in the mayor's recommended budget is 1 FTE down in the program for facilities, energy, and security management. That is for a painter. In Greg's world, in the facility maintenance, because we're short on painters and we need to continue to invest in our facilities. So from a budgetary perspective, it doesn't seem like a very enhanced budget. But there are a set of initiatives that I would talk about that just briefly that course through all of our programs generally that don't require incremental budgetary resources, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of the kinds of work that's going on.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Councilmember Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question about the organization having radio communications and electronics under finance. I've seen that in the past under IT shops typically, that they manage, especially because of the IT software components with a lot of the radio systems and the various servers and all of that kind of equipment. I was just curious why it would be under finance rather than IT.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, I believe it goes back to the long history of property services being connected in Public Works to the fleet system. And when we moved property services, Radio Shop came with it. Its real connection is more often, I believe, to fleet than to IT, but they work collaboratively, all three of them. There's a unique set of equipment and evolution of the equipment. They are, Heather, Radio Shop and 911 collectively have a big connection too. So as to why it's in property services as opposed to IT, it's not something that I'm particularly familiar with.
Great, thank you.
So the enhancement again is just the one painter, but that's the budget enhancement. I just wanted to call out before we go through individual programs, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on each program talking about what we're working on. Otherwise, we won't get to Ms. Hunt's pile. But the themes that the department are working on include things like ongoing fiscal management, obviously, which includes planning and budgeting, but also is the ongoing fiscal management. And where we really go with that is about how do we inform our choices with reliable financial information. There's a resource allocation part to this, but the whole theme of fiscal management goes across, frankly, all of these programs, as does what I referred to in some of the orientation work we did last year as stewardship, which doesn't mean don't invest, but it means invest responsibly with internal controls, documentation, risk management, contracts. So there's a lot of different work going on that isn't a budgetary enhancement to raise our profiles in fiscal management and stewardship. A lot of attention being paid recently to, generally speaking, facilities, not just around the maintenance of them and the enhancement of them, just as space, but also about their impact on our ability to collaborate across departments. A key component to our downtown space planning work, of course, is figuring out the most important functional adjacencies, as well as designing and executing workspaces for a workforce today that is different than the workforce of 20 years ago, whether that's more conference rooms and other technology and space enhancement. So a theme of facilities management and frankly asset management that goes in that. Then I will also, in different ways, some of these programs touch some of our policy initiatives. So things like, for example, when council will be taking up the no smoking or the revised no smoking policy or electronic device policies, there's an execution of that requires property services to get involved with designating space outside our facilities for that policy initiative. A key initiative, of course, remains supplier diversity and procurement related activities to shape how we address some of those. We don't call that out as requiring additional budgetary resources, but it's a clear enhancement to our work in the procurement division and in the treasury division. And lastly, I just wanted to comment a little bit on the connective tissue through the technologies initiatives of the city. We'll talk briefly. You see our last program on this page, the ERP application. That's the core operating system of the city, both financially and HR-wise. But also, as we develop land management systems or an IOP, there are a lot of connectivity related to data that flows through in different ways our department. What I intend to do on each of these 11 programs is just highlight the description parts. I'm not going to spend time on I don't intend to spend time on the results measures or the goals. If you want to, we can. It will be incredibly fast because you can all read as well as I can read it to you. So the accounting and financial reporting, again, this is mainly the controller's division. CAFR, second and third and fourth quarter reports, rate models, cost allocations, et cetera. The core blocking and tackling of accounting and financial management. Links to goals and values. Utility billing, a specialized program, obviously just relates to billing and collecting for the various utilities in the city, water, stormwater, et cetera. Also, there's a huge customer service component to this. They are the frontline people for that. And there's a remediation and customer satisfaction side of this. How do you solve problems, not just collect money, but how do you interface with the utilities? So you need to do water shutoffs and et cetera, et cetera. That's all in utility billing. There's some results, some goals and values. Ordering, buying, and paying for goods and services. This crosses a little bit both procurement and treasury. Bids, RFPs, and requisitions, but also in the entire contract management for the city is in this program. Then once we have the cash, how do we manage it? How do we invest it? How do we actually get it? So how do we create receivables and collect on money that is owed to us? This is in many ways one of our favorite programs, Pay Employees. Interestingly, though, I thought it was relevant to point out that it's more than just a paycheck. Through the payroll system, we also deal with all the financial consequences of benefits and pensions and tax withholding and W-2 reporting, et cetera, as well as expense reimbursements. So anything that goes on your paycheck in one way, shape, or form. Part of our Pay Employees program. Risk management encompasses our asset protection through insurance and things like that, but also our tort claims and workers' comp claims, small tort claims. Also has a role leading some efforts across the city in our risk management and safety committee. So sponsors and drives things like a distracted driver policy that flows through our risk management activities. There's some data, goals and values. Strategic financial services, largely part of Sandy's world. Again, that's budgeting and planning, not always the same thing. Financial analysis, financial leadership, policy decisions about how might we cost out this initiative versus that initiative and what's the, but also importantly, continuing to move the dial here on long-term forecasting. Crystal balls are never perfect, but we need to keep raising our stakes on sort of what happens on the good and the bad and how we plan for challenges or opportunities in the future. That's all in strategic financial services. Here's the radio communications and electronics program. Loading the link to information technology. Within this, it's also, I guess another, to respond to your earlier question, Councilmember Johnson, there is a connection to IT also through some of the evolving technologies in our space, smart boards and all that stuff that does affect in different ways, shapes, or forms. Say, how does a police vehicle receive information on the fly? How does that lever into how we all connect through technology? So the radio shop has a role in some of that. Here's the broader facilities energy security management program. Again, most of the energy and the dollars go to the facility side, but it's also a critical link and a sort of centerpiece in a sort of hub and spoke way on both security and energy management. Brian Milberg talks to all sorts of different people across the city, whether it's helping the fire department install energy controls at a fire station, or working with Gail and Brendan on different sustainability initiatives related to the city building benchmarking or different things like that. And Art Thomas in the security function as a sort of coordinating across the various jurisdictions, both, say, the police department, hired security in parking ramps, MBC, the county, a lot of different connective work being done in the security area. Again, this is the one program that has our enhancement, the basically $100,000 to add to the budget for a painter as we continue to move on our space needs. We don't really do much with this. It just flows through us. This is the $5 million or so a year that the city pays to the NBC for rent and maintenance of space in City Hall. County pays the other share since they own roughly 50% of the occupancy. And then our last program is our ERP application, our system and financial support. Again, we are going through this significant upgrade where we're taking the old Compass system. It will now be rebranded as the Comet system for the City of Minneapolis Enterprise Technology System. And basically every piece of financial data flows through there. The ERP program has a big impact on our HRIS system. And something that often goes, it's a little less visible, but is potentially one of the most important features going forward, is we are looking at how to build a much more robust third leg of this ERP stool, which is the data warehouse, and how do we compile financial information in ways that we can slice and dice and sort in different ways. That's often done through a system called Cognos, but there's a huge data warehouse compilation aspect to our ERP program. This basically mirrors what I said earlier about the different ways we are working with our partners across the city and the residents to move the city forward on the City That Works and other objectives that don't necessarily get called out as budget enhancements, but they're sort of business plan initiatives. These are the CARS recommendations that are included in the mayor's budget, mayor's recommended budget. If you have any specific questions about them, I direct those to Ms. Christensen. Largely because of the Property Services Division, we also have a share of capital items in the capital budget, and you will, oops, I'm skipping through the ERP thing. That's been through this committee multiple times. The $3.6 million in 15 for this, both the Comet upgrade and enhancements. Here's the capital. We have 4 capital programs included in the capital budget, mainly around property services activities, $1.2 million for repair and improvements. And most of these are, or at least the first 2, or actually the first 3, are ongoing, really capital programs. They're not so much projects. The last one is a project. But that's the capital side, and roll it all together in the way the general ledger works as opposed to a program budgeting. You will see in total 2.8% current service level base budget increase with 1 enhancement for $100,000 gives us a 3% total year-over-year percent change. My favorite takeaway from this chart, which isn't obvious in the chart, is that if you pulled out the dollars associated in the 2015 mayor's recommended budget for salaries and wages and fringes, regardless of which kinds of funds it comes from, it amounts to roughly $24 million, or 55% of our overall budget. And if you stripped out things like $5 million going to NBC, which is sort of just us as a pass-through, it ends up being that 75 or 80%, as you would expect, of our true budget is all about the 250 FTE slots and how we do the work we do every day.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilmember Johnson, I didn't know you. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Just didn't want to. Okay, if I could go to Councilmember Fry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carby, I actually don't have a question, but can you repeat what you just said again, just so I understand it? I want to let this.
I'll try.
Go through my brain, yeah.
On that chart, you'll see the way we keep the books and records, which is not program-based. The 2015 budget is $43.3 million. Bottom column, bottom line of the mayor's recommended budget, a 3% increase over last year. If you took each of the line items.
I'm looking at the bottom line now.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, got it.
If you took in that the 6 line items that are salaries and wages or fringe benefits, 2 in each of general fund, special revenue fund, and internal service funds, and summed those 6 numbers, 11, 4, 157, 57, 5, and you get just about $24 million. $24 million is therefore the people cost for our department, and that's 55% of 43 million, roughly. But the 43 million is somewhat inflated and arbitrary because it includes, for example, a $5 million pass-through that the city pays to NBC. So it's not, I mean, it's real, but it's not an operating cost, if you will, in that sense. So if you backed out that 5 million and other things where it's really just in our budget because it's the home of the pass-through, you know, the people costs end up being 75 or 80% of our department's budgets, just like they are for many, many other departments. So,
Thank you.
which is the reason I like that stat is because we're people too. And the key initiative, even though we talked about the programs, you know, remains how do we unleash the inherent capabilities of the wonderful staff we have. I mean, we're going to be able to deliver the services for the enterprise, for the residents, for those who come in contact with us, to the extent that our people continue to feel like this is a great place to work, and we make it a great place to work, and we inspire them, and we challenge them, and then we'll be able to deliver results. But it's you know, it's on us. So with that, stand for questions. 11 o'clock on the nose.
I know. I don't want to end on time, for heaven's sake, so let's see if I can keep going. But I do have a question from Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. You know, the first one is with regards to any sort of police settlements that happen, that goes with risk management and claims, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Yang, yes, it goes. Claims of any sort are paid out of our self-insurance fund. We budget money into the self-insurance fund. We maintain an asset base in our self-insurance fund based on some actuarial studies about risk profiles. And we pay for the risk management staff who oversee that activity out of that fund. So that's what the $2 million in risk management cost in our budget is. But the self-insurance fund by itself has, what's it, $60 million now?
Did you say 60 million?
As a fund balance in the self-insurance fund, there's $60 million or something.
Okay. And, you know, and I'm going to say this, I'm not trying to be funny here, okay? So please bear with me, but, you know, this enhancement of $98,000 or $96,000 for a FTE painter, you know, what does $96,000 give us in terms of that one full-time painter? Because I probably should have been a painter instead of a council member.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fully loaded cost of the painters. That's you know, salary would be probably 60% or 65% of that number. The cost of the fringes, the cost of the space.
Vehicle materials.
Yes.
So it's a full thing, though,
Yes.
right?
To
Okay.
add a person and is incorporates more than their salary. Their salary, they go on whatever the schedule for the, what bargaining is it unit?
Okay. Okay. Well, this is what I can ask offline. I mean, I'd love to hear the number for a full-time council member then. Offline, though. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter. Obviously, I think this particular department is extraordinarily well managed, and it's many thanks to the professional staff across the enterprise that we have associated with that, and really dedicated to the financial stewardship. I just wanted to comment that I'm particularly been impressed over the last 5 years, but in particular this past year, recognizing that it's not about saying no, it's about making sure we have the financial resources in place for ongoing expenses, and before we incur something, we're making the best decision on behalf of the residents and taxpayers of the city of Minneapolis. I think that represents it. One of the things that we didn't really touch on, because it's not directly under the authority under the finance department, but is the collaborative spirit across all departments. It's really helping and supporting all departments do what they need to do, as well as the new reinvigorated function of our internal audit. And one of the things that's one of those back of the house kind of operations that we don't see, and the less we see, the better it is, how we're performing as our, the CAFR or the response to the state auditor, and how we're positioning ourselves and keeping our bond rating as high as it is all a result of the work that yourself and your great department provides. So if you'd like to offer a last closing comment on those intersections, that would be welcome. Otherwise, thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity and those comments, and it's all, as you said, the collaborative spirit, both and the talented bunch of professionals in our staff and across the city that we get the chance to work with every day. So
thank you very much. It is an example of running the city well, and one of our key goals, of course, as a city. So I thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter. I think we'll be able to move on in some smooth transition to our next department hearing, which is 911. So I'm going to invite Ms. Hunt to do that. As she does that, I also would like to point out to members and the audience that we're also pleased to have the presence of our city coordinator, Spencer Cronk, with us today. Who's one of those, both of these departments obviously report to the coordinator's office.
You know what? We need to clarify something.
Take your time.
You know what? Here, this includes the enhancements. Then that also. Well, this isn't supposed to be concerned. Thank you, Sandy.
Whenever you're ready, please feel free to begin.
Good morning. I'm Heather Hunt. I am the 911 director, and we are here today to talk about our 2015 mayor's recommended budget for 911.
Excuse me, before we begin, I just want to make sure, do council members have copies of this presentation? Okay, just want to make sure everybody had something in front. Thank you.
Okay. Our budget is located on pages F55 through 60 in the budget book. This is our department organizational chart, and you'll notice that we have flattened our organizations somewhat, combining some job classes. This chart does reflect still the separate job classes of 911 dispatchers and 911 operators, and that cross-training initiative is in process. Also today, here with me are my staff, Christine McPherson, Assistant Director, Janelle Harris, our Operations Manager, LaVey Robinson, our Training and Quality Assurance Manager, and our 4 new 911 dispatchers who just started their classroom training this week. Tyler, Mary, Alyssa, and Christopher are here to see some government in action today.
Thank you. It's good to get out of the basement once in a while, isn't it? Good.
For
See
all
the
of
sun.
us. Okay. The 911 program is a single program in the unit. We are the link between the public and emergency response. The program benefits are that Minneapolis is a safe city because responder safety is enhanced, and we are that strong link where no police car, fire truck, or ambulance goes anywhere or does anything in the city without 911 first receiving and fielding that call. The recommended budget is as shown, with the enhancements that have been recommended of 4 additional FTE that would be dedicated to 911 dispatching and call handling functions, and a $150,000 CARS budget, capital budget request, which we'll talk about on a subsequent slide here. The program enhancement will add 4 FTE that will assist us in making progress toward achieving the level recommended by the staffing study, and ultimately assist us in making progress in achieving the national standard of 90% of 911 calls answered in 10 seconds or less. Goals, our most salient goal, of course, is safety, but we can also submit that all city goals are impacted by 911 because of livability issues. People want to move here if they feel safe. They want to open businesses here if they feel safe. The 911 program directly contributes to growing the city, improving equity. Our new next generation 911 system will allow for text messaging, which is a feature that is greatly desired and needed by our deaf and hard of hearing community. Also, increasing our staff will help improve our surge capacity, which will allow us to answer calls more quickly during those spikes in activity that we have discussed. And also fine-tuning our demand-based scheduling program will further refine our ability to match our staffing with activity levels. (911) is doing well. We are in a mode of continuous improvement, and we still have much work to do. Our answer times through third quarter 2014 are averaging 6.5 seconds, which is an improvement. Our staff is doing an excellent job of answering calls quickly and accurately. We are working on our workplace culture initiative, which is progressing. I owe you a hiring report and staffing report, and all 80 authorized positions are currently filled, including, or plus 3 bell curve positions that we were directed to fill last year. And we are continuing to tee up a new hiring process so that we're ready to go for 2015. Our cross-training is on track. At this time, 80% of our total staff is in the single or in the new job class of 911 dispatcher. We also, a little bragging here, Minneapolis 911 received a award from the Minnesota chapter of APCO for outstanding public service for several incidents, one of which was a woman who had fallen off a cliff and was actually hanging from the cliff. and managed to dial 911, and our operator, through great diligence and ingenuity, was able to locate her and get the help to her and save her and bring her down safely from the cliff. We have revitalized our labor management team, including co-chair training for both labor and management through the Twin Cities Labor Management Council. That was recently completed. And we have refined our demand-based scheduling with employee input through our labor management scheduling team. And we have a new schedule ready to go for 2015 that meets the demands and also increases some staffing levels at both ends of the day. We have a capital recommendation for $150,000 to add call processing protocols to our dispatcher training. And this is a software that guides the questioning of calls. The benefit of this software is that all callers will receive a standard level of care and questions won't fall through the cracks. It's a lot to remember for over 150 different incident types. And this is a guide that will help our staff be more thorough and assure that those low frequency, high importance incidents are handled consistently.
Excuse me, Ms. Hunt, just a quick question on this. This is a current CARS request for starting in 15, or when would that be brought online? Should this be approved?
It will be in 2015. We'll be implementing it, at least our plan is for implementation in third or fourth quarter 2015. We also obtained UASI Urban Area Security Initiative funding for, that's the $288,000 amount. So the 150 just fills out the total cost of the purchase of that system.
Thank you.
Our other capital item through the CLIC process that is being recommended is the telephone system replacement. This has been a multi-year project, and 2015 is the final year for $135,000 to complete the installation of our new next generation 911 phone system that we are sharing with 5 metro area partners in phase 1 of this regional phone system project. Budget comparison, the percent of change reflects the enhancements that have been recommended. And our special revenue is state grant 911 funding. That can only be used for specified purposes. It cannot be used for personnel reasons. The bulk of that currently goes toward our support, technical support of our CAD system and other systems that are supported by the IT department. Highlights of our expenditure, again, the staffing will be increased by 4, actually it would be 911 dispatchers, but to the goal of answering calls more quickly. And then the CARS funding is reflected here.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at, I think you had a budget request presentation document I saw. How many staff would we need in order to, additional staff would we need in order to meet the national staffing models?
There's no perfect number. As we all know, no 911 center can guarantee that they will answer every call immediately. The request was based on the staffing study that we did, that is a tool that our professional organization developed to help inform 911 call center managers on what their staffing levels should be. So while there is no perfect number, the recommendation for the study did suggest that as many as 6 would be helpful. It's not just a matter of number of staff, because the things that influence call center performance, certainly staffing is an important factor, but also deployment of those staff, training, technology, and policies and protocols all factor into call center performance. So currently, we are at about 85% of calls answered in 10 seconds or less, as best as we can estimate it, because as you know, our current statistical system can't give us an exact number. So once we get our new system in place in 2015, toward third quarter of 2015, we will have several months of good data, and we'll have hired the 4 recommended FTE and deployed them. And by then, our new 911 phone system will be in place. That is going to reduce the total number of calls that our agents will have to answer. So I think that mid-year next year would be a great time to reevaluate what that actual number should be.
So with the 6, does that factor that we're going to have less call volume because of the new system, or is that based off of the system today?
It's based off the current system.
Oh, okay.
Because we input the numbers that we currently have. It's not that sophisticated to be able to forecast. So right now there are some moving parts that we just do not know what the actual numbers are. But the exciting thing is we will be able to do that next year.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. The analytics that come along with the new software package much improves your ability to deploy resources at the right times, at the right call volumes, at the right places, and as well as the enhancement of the cross-training of operators to make sure people are prepared to answer the call, because these people are calling at the most fragile time of their lives in many cases, and that does not make it less stressful for the person on the other end of the phone. So thank you for that. I appreciate the implementation, and we'd love a report back on how that is implemented. Please continue. Or did you? Okay, please continue. Here we are. So continue to the next slide.
We are at the point where I will take any additional questions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilmember Yang, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hunt, you say that currently we're at 85% answered in 10 seconds or less. I mean, that's an estimate. And, you know, I wanted to ask you, I mean, so with the 4 new FTEs, you know, about this time next year, I mean, where do you hope we should be in terms of that percentage?
Again, we won't really know until we get the new equipment in place that can accurately measure. However, the 4 FTE will definitely improve that number. And currently, we are meeting 90% at certain times of day, certain days of week, even certain weeks during the year. We've seen what we believe, as best we can estimate, that we are meeting the standard. So we're close.
Okay, and so I mean, I guess for me at least, you know, with the 85% answered in 10 seconds or less, I'm hoping that, you know, with this expenditure, I mean, maybe we'll get to 90% so that, you know, it would be worth our money to, you know, put $350,000 into this and get 5% in return. But let me ask you this. I mean, just with the new 4 FTEs, I mean, what are the things that we're going to receive out of that in terms of, I mean, obviously we would like to, have, let's say, a 5% jump in terms of calls answered in 10 seconds or less, but what other things can we see as a benefit from the 4 FTEs?
Adding those staff will help distribute the workload more equitably so that it will take some of the stress off the workforce. There will be more people to spread the work around. And so we'd be looking at stress reduction. We'd be looking at a better ability to handle those spikes in call volume that we know occur. And we will be able to do additional training because we'll have enough staff in place so that we'll be able to get people away from work to go to training. All of these things that will just lessen the pressure on the existing workforce.
And, I see here with the cross-training that 80% of total staff is now in the new single job class. And how long is it going to take for us to get to 100? And or when are we going to get to 100?
We will be at 100 on January 1, 2017. Or sooner.
Or sooner.
Or sooner.
Okay. And let me ask this part. I mean, so I know there was some friction with certain employees with regards to the cross-training and getting to that one single class. I mean, are we, from now until then, are we going to see some exceptions made for certain employees, or what's the plan with regards to that?
We, our employees chose a new union to represent them, and we are heading into arbitration. And so the issues, it would be imprudent of me to comment on the issues that are going to arbitration out of respect for our employees' union and that process. So there'll be a point at which we can talk about that, but it's not right now.
Thank you. Any additional question? Appreciate that very much. Appreciate the work that 911 does. Did I say too many ones in that? But it's a remarkable service that we provide our residents at a critical time in their lives. And so thank you very much for all of the work you do and for your presentation today. That concludes our work for this morning. So we'll take the official act of receiving and filing these presentations. All in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Although an actual vote was not required, I think it's nice to say it on the record. Upcoming budget hearing dates. We'll continue this on October 28th, where we'll be hearing from the Youth Coordinating Board, Municipal Building Commission, Minneapolis Television Network, and the Park and Recreation Board, followed by the Public Works and the Police Department on October 30th, and leaving our last scheduled public hearings, which would be on November 7th for the Information Technology Audit, Mayor, and overflow time of other questions that have come up. So thank you very much for attending today and being engaged, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon on October 28th. We are adjourned.